Hello, welcome to the video guide for the slightly older style of Truma system installation, whereby there are multiple controls for the system, maybe in some different places around your motorhome. Now, your heating and hot water are two separate systems, and each of them can run on either gas or mains electric. And as such, there are going to be 4 controls for this system. Now, sometimes they can all be in one place, other times they can be spread apart, and some may vary depending on the age of your motorhome, depending on what controls were typically installed at that time. Now, as a rule of thumb, you typically have a control for your heating on electric and one for your hot water on gas that can often be next to each other. The heating on gas is usually controlled directly on the fireplace here itself, and then there'll usually be some kind of mains electric hot water control elsewhere as well. Now, this video is going to be showing the most common type of this installation. Yours may vary slightly, and of course the locations of such controls and things will vary depending on your motorhome. So in your main handover video, you will be shown the locations of the controls. This video will just explain how to use them. So let's start by showing you the different types of controls that we can have. So here we have a typical Truma fireplace, and this vehicle that it's installed on is actually a 2005 vehicle, but there may be some replacement parts that have been installed on here throughout the years, we don't know. But this particular fireplace here has the gas valve on the left, the blown air controls over there on the right. Don't worry, I'll explain how all of this works shortly. Some systems, like this one, can have an automatic igniter. So when we turn the gas control, the igniter will immediately start to fire. Some Truma systems, though, will have a manual push igniter button. That's fine, it just means that you have to manually ignite the gas flame when lighting your fireplace on gas. Otherwise, the rest of the operation is identical. Now, some more modern Truma fireplaces will pretty much have this same setup for the gas system, but the blown air controls will vary, and I think the controls can often be switched on which side of the fireplace they are actually on. But to be honest, again, everything functions in pretty much the same way. Just adapt this video guide so that it fits exactly what hardware you have in the van. So that's typically the fireplace setups you're likely to expect. You're also going to have some controls that look like this. Now I'm going to turn off the camera light here so that you can get a bit of a hopefully better view of these controls. Now, yours can also be black. Okay, so these controls do come in both a sort of silvery grey and a black. The silvery grey are more common. And these controls control the heating on electric and the hot water on gas. Now, again, don't worry, I will explain in more detail how these work and how you tell the controls apart. So that now means we have found 3 of the 4 controls. We've got our gas heating, we've got our electric heating, and we've got our gas hot water. We also have electric hot water as well. Now, that's when there are actually other elements of this system in the background. Typically, this type of installation will have mains electrical isolators that you need to ensure are on or off depending on whether or not you wish to use mains electric to power each of these systems. Now, in order for your mains electric heating to work, you will need the mains electric isolator on, but you will then of course need to come to this control to configure your heating setup. The hot water, believe it or not, actually doesn't do this in this particular installation, but I'll show you the isolators nonetheless. So in this particular motorhome, we have a cupboard here that has some amenities like the mains consumer unit here, but there are 2 electrical isolators here. We have one labelled water heater and one labelled heater. These are both mains electrical isolators. Now, if I flick the heater one on, as you can see, it lights up in this instance, and now we will find that our control here will work. For example, if I turn off the camera light, you'll easily see the green light appear here when I turn the control on, and the control will work absolutely fine. If I was to flick off that isolator switch, which I'll do now, what will happen is the system will not receive mains electric power, and as you can see, we have no green light. So that is how the mains electrical isolator functions for the heater. Let's now show you the hot water. So again, we come into this cupboard, and I turn the camera light back on again. We turn the water heater on. That's now illuminated, but in this instance, that's all we need to do. The water heater is simply an on-off. If it receives mains electrical power, it turns on. So this isolator is sufficient enough to turn on and off the hot water system. There are no controls to operate, which means you have no control over temperature or anything like that, but a simple flick of the switch is enough to turn your water boiler on or off on mains electric. Now, of course, it's recommended to make sure that before turning on your water boiler that you do have water in your freshwater tank and that your water pump is on so that the system has been primed. That way you're not going to be attempting to heat an empty boiler. So, let's now run through the different ways to turn on and off the system. So, let's start with hot water. On mains electric, we just flick on that isolator. That's it, job done. Very simple. On gas, however, we come to this control here on the right hand side. You can recognise this control because it only has two different positions on the right hand side, and it is titled Ultra Store. This is your hot water control for gas operation. So if you're running your hot water on electric, don't touch this, but if you're running it on gas, you need to touch this. Now, you will also find your boiler system may have a flue, and there are many different flue designs out there. If your flue has a cover, a protective cover, make sure it is removed before operating your hot water boiler, otherwise you will find it won't work. So with that done and everything checked, let's now turn on the hot water system on gas, and all we need to do is turn the silver surround that you can see has the little pimple on the side, turn it from the 0 position, which is off, to the flame position, which is on. We get a similar green light just there, and we can then set our desired temperature using the dial. So that would be 60 degrees hot water as the target temperature right there. And it's as simple as that. Our hot water is now working on gas. Now what I'm going to do is turn it off, because what I want you to hear is the sound of the gas valve. Hopefully it comes across on camera. But when we turn this onto the gas position, you will hear a loud click, typically from where the water boiler is located. And sometimes you can even hear the igniter, which is a very, very rapid fire igniter to ignite that gas supply, and then it will light. Similarly, when you turn off the control, you can sometimes hear another loud click, but a bit duller or more muffled than the initial click of the gas valve shutting. So let's do this without me talking so that you can hear those sounds. I don't know if they came across in camera. Okay, you heard the shutdown click just there. Let's try it once more, turning on. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so I did just make sure the cover was off on the outside. So let's now turn on again, see if we can hear those sounds. Did you hear the loud click then? That was the gas valve opening. There was a very rapid fire of the igniter, but then the gas immediately lit. Now I'm going to turn it off, so you should hear the duller click, usually exactly the same time as I'd twist the dial. Ready? Hopefully you then heard the duller click. So that finally worked. That is the sounds your gas system can make. Now again, your controls may be in different places and the sounds may come from different places. Sometimes you might not even be able to hear them. But if you do hear those noises, that is perfectly normal and what you should expect. So that's your hot water covered. Just to recap, mains electric hot water, just flick the isolator on. Hot water on gas, you use this control. And there we go. So now let's talk about heating for heating your living space. I'm going to cover the mains electric aspect first, which, yet again, we're going to start by doing the isolator that will be somewhere in your vehicle. So I'm going to turn on the isolator here. There we go. And now we have mains electric power. Now I come to the control here on the left. This one is for the heating, and you can recognise it because it says ultra heat. We typically have some big numbers in the thousands there. Sometimes you can have wiggly lines, but they're very rare. And then we also have 230 volts written down here. And usually the internal dial is labelled 1 to 9. So those are the ways to recognise this control. Now, the numbers on the side are the wattage of the heating system. So this, for example, would be 2000 watts or 2 kilowatts. That would be 1000 watts or 1 kilowatt. And that's 500 watts or half a kilowatt. The zero position is off, and just like the hot water control, we twist the grey surround with the pimple on it to whichever wattage we want. The more powerful we run the system, not only the better it will be at heating the vehicle. It will heat up quicker and more, I was going to say more efficiently, but not necessarily. But it will, of course, consume more electrical current and power. So I'm going to turn to 2 kilowatt. And as you can see, once we've chosen an option, we get a green light to show the system is on. And then we just turn this dial, much like a thermostat, to choose when the heating cuts in and cuts out. Now, again, if you're keen-eared, you will be able to actually hear a little switch somewhere flicking inside the system whenever you move this dial, as you'll hear it cutting in and cutting out. Let's see if we can hear that. There. I can hear it coming from the fireplace down here in this instance. So you can hear exactly when you're going to cut the heating in and out based on the current temperature inside the vehicle there. But that's basically how it works. So just to recap again, turn the isolator on wherever it is in your vehicle, choose the wattage of your desire with the control, and then set your thermostat or cut in and cut out point using the central dial. Now again, I just want to reiterate, those electrical isolators can be anywhere, okay? So in your main handover video, it will be demonstrated as to where your heating and hot water isolators are. Sometimes they can be in a Sargent unit control panel that houses all of your electrical isolators and fuses and breakers and things like that. Sometimes it can be separate switches like we have here. Other times the switches can be in completely random locations, completely separate from each other. Either way, you will have electrical isolators somewhere, and they need to be on for the electrical operation of your heating and hot water. So that is the electric heating covered there. Now let's do the heating on gas. So we come now to the fireplace itself, and in this instance, on this particular model, the gas controls are here on the left, and it does have an automatic ignition. Now what we need to do is to turn this dial, and it operates anti-clockwise from 0 to 1 through to 10. And this is going to be the gas intensity. When lighting your fireplace, always light on a low setting, because the gas flow can be too intense on higher settings and it will just blow itself out. So we're going to turn to a setting somewhere between 2 and 3. Now the gas won't be introduced until we push this control down, okay? Once the gas is lit and it keeps itself successfully lit, we can then let go of the gas valve, and any subsequent movement of this control is just going to be a twist only, not a push down. We also, by the way, have a pilot light viewport down here, and we use this to see if the gas has lit or if it has gone out, depending on what we're trying to do. So the process is to turn this dial from 0 to about 2 to 3, somewhere in that region. We're then going to look in the pilot light viewport as we then push and hold down on that control. That will light the gas. And once we can see the pilot light has lit, we wait for it to stabilize and kind of settle in, and then we will then turn it up to our desired intensity at that point. But I'll talk you through that as we go. So I'm going to turn somewhere between 2 and 3, and you can hear that automatic igniter there. Okay, now I'm going to look in the pilot light viewport, and I'm going to press down on the control. And I can see the gas is lit. I'm trying to angle the camera. There you go, you can see it there. Okay, now there's a little piece of metal in with the gas flame there that's going to warm up, and when that gets red hot it will glow nice and orange. So we're just going to look to see if the colour in that area changes from a nice blue to a bit more of an orangey hue. So now I'm going to let go of the gas control, and as you can see, the gas, if I can get the camera back to show it again, there we go, is still lit nicely. Now I'm going to slowly twist the control round to higher numbers, okay, and at some point it will kind of splutter a little bit. There you go, there's the splutter, and we're nicely lit. Sometimes you can hear the gas roar a little bit more at those settings. That happened at somewhere between 4 and 5 on this particular model. And if you find that when you get to the splutter point it blows itself out, just turn it back down again, relight and keep going. But that's it. Once you're able to keep it lit like this, you're good to go, and you can turn it to whichever setting you want. And that will of course increase the amount of heat generated. Now, the colder the temperature, the harder the fireplace will be to light and to keep itself to a point where it will keep itself lit. Okay, but that's just how these things work. Now, to turn off, I'm going to, whilst looking at the pilot light there, by the way, you don't need to get down on all fours and put your face right there. When you know the angle to look at, you can actually see it from quite far away. As you could see right there, we can see the flame, and I'm all the way over here, so just to let you know. So I'm going to twist this back to the 0 position whilst I am looking at the gas flame, okay, so we can verify it goes out. So 3, 2, 1, and there we've seen it die and it's gone out. And that is it. That's the heating on gas. So just to recap, we turn the dial from 0 to about 2 or 3 on this particular model, nice and low. When we turn the dial, the automatic igniter on this particular model will kick in, and then we push down on the gas control to introduce gas. The igniter will ignite the gas, and we keep the control held down till we see the flame in the pilot light viewport stabilise. At that point we can let go of the gas control, and then we can slowly attempt to turn up the dial. If it splutters and blows itself out, we can then just turn back down and attempt relighting, keeping it at that low setting for a little bit longer before trying to go higher again. But eventually you'll be able to set more intense heat and you're good to go. If you have the fireplace type that has a manual igniter, you're going to do everything exactly the same, except when you turn to your desired point and you're looking in the viewport, you're going to need 2 hands, one to hold down the gas and one to repeatedly ignite until you see it light in the pilot light viewport, at which point you can stop manually igniting, but holding down the control until it stabilizes, and everything else is all exactly the same. So I just want to recap those things all over. So mains electric, hot water, you operate by typically just the isolator itself, the mains electrical isolator, and in this particular motorhome it was the switch in the wardrobe. And it's simply an on-off, there's nothing else you do. Hot water on gas is controlled with your ultra store control like this, and we have the on-off with the position here and selected temperature there. Heating on mains electric, we need to turn on the electrical isolator also, and in this case it was right next to the hot water one as well. But then we also need to operate the control that will look like this, labelled ultra heat with big numbers down the side and maybe 230 written down the bottom, and an internal dial as well labelled 1 to 9. We choose the power of the system by twisting the collar to the desired number and choose our thermostat setting with the dial in the centre. And heating on gas is done on the fireplace itself. We use the gas control to set a low heat and intensity, then push down to introduce gas. We either automatically or manually ignite the gas until we see it light in the pilot light viewport, at which point we can let it stabilise for a few minutes or a few seconds depending on how warm or cold the unit is, and we can then gradually turn up until it is able to keep itself lit. Finally, I want to talk about your blown air settings. So of course, by default, whether you're using heating or hot water, heating on gas or electric, not heating or hot water, sorry. So whether or not you're using heating on gas or electric, the hot air will always just come out radiating from the fireplace. But you can blow it around ducting ports that look very much like this around your motorhome. And to do that, you're going to use the blown air controls over here. So on this particular model, this is the older style control where we have a rotating dial at the top with numbers 1 to 5 and a 3-position rocker switch. In the middle of the rocker switch is a dot, that's the off position. If we move that to the A position, this is automatic and it kind of tries to automatically find a nice fan setting to balance between the heat being generated and so on. I have mixed results. Some people like the automatic setting. However, you can operate it manually too, and that's what this position is over on the far left. In the manual position, this dial then chooses your fan intensity. Okay, and that's your blown air controls. It's as easy as that. Now, you may have the more modern fireplace of this, which has blown air controls that look like that. I'm showing you on my mobile phone here. This has 2 sections. It has a top dial that rotates between 1 to 5, and then it has a lower dial that just selects between A, O, M and fan. Now, the control works very much the same way. A is the automatic setting, 0 is off, M is manual, where you will then twiddle the top dial between those numbers. So that works exactly the same way as this, just different configuration on the controls. But there's also this additional fan position at the bottom, which just basically puts the fan on like a 5.5 or a 6 setting, and that's it. So that's your heating and hot water. If you have any questions, do let us know and we'll do what we can to answer, but hopefully that's helped you understand. I just want to reiterate again that this is showing a particular motorhome. Your motorhome may vary on what type of setup you have, how many of these controls are actually included. Some may only have, for example, gas heating but gas and electric hot water. You may have just gas only, both systems. You may have the fully fledged installation. You will also maybe have things in different locations. It's not unusual to have a heating control one place, a hot water control over there, the isolator is completely random, and then the fireplace somewhere as well. That's not unusual either. But this video will hopefully include all of the different variations that are most common and will hopefully apply to your motorhome as well. So just use this video to understand how to operate the controls, but also refer to your main handover video and information provided at handover by the handover specialist to understand where your controls are and any particular operating differences that your system may have. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Take care.